論喎，而係你表達一種意思對嗰樣嘢，而係希望點解佢要用手勢咧？就因為大家都睇到啊嘛，係嘛？亦都咧有時好快咁你講唔清楚，咁你用嗰個手勢咧，就會令大家知哦，原來佢有一啲嘢 concern 喎。咁其他人咪知道，咦？咁你個 concern 係咩啊？大家一齊去處理佢咯，得唔得？即係呢一啲手勢全部嗰個目的都係為咗咁樣做嘅。
Okay, actually this is related. So now we're going to go through our, we could shut this off for a second. We're going to go through our proposal, right? And the proposal is, right, we will all eat dim sum tonight. So write that up here.
Now, 佢俾第一個功課我哋。就係話咧今晚食點心，因為佢好忙嘅呢兩日，真係即係又接受傳媒訪問，又 train 我哋，有呢樣嗰樣咧，即係好忙，所以佢個腦咧成日都諗住呢樣嘢。所以俾個功課大家啦，就係今晚食點心。OK。係啦，即係今日我哋而家要喺度啊，即係一齊去決定，就住今晚食點心呢一樣嘢去討論啦，得唔得 ？OK，tune in 到啊，嗬。Okay, so that's the proposal. We will all dim sum tonight, everyone. That's our proposal. So first 提議嚟㗎啦嚇。好。So first thing we're going to ask is, are there any clarifying questions? Is there something unclear about this proposal? 第一件事要處理嘅就係有冇咧要 clarify 嘅嘢啦，即係我哋通常用呢個就叫 clarify 啦，即係要澄清嘅關於呢一樣個 proposal 呢個建議有啲咩要需要澄清嘅？你覺得？你而家要佢即刻講啊？
Oh, right, yeah, right. So for clarifying questions, you're right. You will have 1 minute each tops to share, and we will have a timekeeper who will tell you when you're approaching your limit of asking your question. And for concerns, when we move into concerns, we'll have 2 minutes each tops. We probably won't need that much time, but that's how much we're going to use. Yes. Okay, so any clarifying questions? We will take your... we will take your note. Well, who's our stack taker? Great. So she will take down on stack whoever is on stack, whoever has their hand raised, right? So if you have your hand raised, get on stack over here, and she will put you on stack.
好啦，即係而家進入㗎，即刻開始傾㗎咯喎，已經 ready 未啊？嚟咯喎，好。咁第一件事問下有冇啲咧澄清問題嘅關於呢一個建議？誒有啦，好快。叫咩名啊？請問你？咩我係嘛？係啊，怡光咯。澄清問題。
Yes, are we going to have it for as a like a main dinner or just for snack?
係主菜定係零食嚟㗎咁樣？
So usually for each question, we will then answer that response. So in this proposal, we're having it for main dinner. Only dim sum for main dinner.
澄清咗 main dinner 嚟嘅，主菜嚟嘅。好。對佢係有文化差異。
No, we traditional Cantonese want to.
幾點
What time is dinner tonight? Let's say in this proposal it says we will have dim sum at 8 p.m. tonight.
嗱，再清楚咗㗎啦，我哋會係咪啊？我哋會以點心為主菜，今晚8點鐘。OK。有好多。
You could take stack. So if you're taking stack, you could take stack for the whole list of hands you have, and then get their names just down, and then just hint to them when it's their turn. Okay.
係啦，咁咧就。
你嗰陣係開始嘅時候咧，邊個有權定呢個題目㗎？定係全部先㗎？等 定咗題目嗰時候，
Yeah. And then as we're taking down the names for staff, we can also go through staff. So your job will be to get people for staff and keep an eye out for who wants to be put on the list. And just yeah. Wait, okay, hold on. Let me just do a little intervention. Okay, so the staff taker her whole job is just to figure out who to put on staff. And then also to tell me who's next on staff. So try to multitask, right? Figure out who's going to get put on staff, and then when I ask you, because I'm facilitating, who's next on staff, I can see that it's Evan. So while Evan is asking his question, you can still be taking staff, right? Okay, so
以安講咗啦，跟住下一個。Okay.
我想問呢啲點心係會喺個籠上邊裝，定係攞碟裝？同埋我哋會用浙江醋定係鬼佬醋
？So I'll say that's a great question. I don't know. We can maybe keep it open. Any kind of dish. Maybe we'll have to call and see.
下一個呢個。
Ooh. Well, with this proposal, we will only have meat dim sum. Oh, do we sense there could be a concern growing later? Okay.
只有肉嘅啫。
其實我唔係好明點玩得，咁邊個人提呢個題目出嚟㗎？係咪全民公投定全民都可以提嘅？點樣？你想話個題目係點解佢一個人提唔係其他人提？係點樣個機制點樣提？
連個題目都相反啊！
唔好意思，係啊。
中環我轉緊西環。係啊，
點解人？
中環嘅西環。
Okay, great. So this is okay. Let me explain briefly. This is just a proposal we brainstormed last night. In reality, proposals would either be coming from working groups that were actively working on different areas, or they would be coming from breakout groups. So people would be talking to each other about various issues after being prompted with various questions, and they would bring suggestions quite organically. This is just a kind of proposal just for time to make things go quicker.
咁要解釋下，因為純粹時間關係，我哋琴晚已經準備咗一啲嘢咁樣，咁所以提議嘅啫。其實通常咧就會係一係咧就一個大組度大家brainstorm 出嚟嘅，或者分咗小組，由小組提議傾啲乜嘢嘢，然後咧拎出嚟傾嘅。咁一係咧就係嗰啲工作組啊，即係有一啲嘅工作員啊，或者係一個統籌小組咧去提議咁樣樣嘅。
周慧，佢答咗我㗎啦，我都係問緊嗰啲點心係咪素㗎
？OK， 即係處理咗。
Oh, ownership. So great.
阿婷喺邊？
幾多錢？
Oh, budget. Endless budget for dim sum, always.
我嗰個其實係想問咧，係咪淨係 facility 就可以答？即係有人就係想澄清，係咪淨係 facilitator 答？
Oh yeah. So right. So there's a couple ways this could also work, right? Because we're short on time, I'm just going to answer the questions. But if this is a group proposal, then the group who's bringing it can answer the questions, or the proposal could then belong to the full group, and everybody could answer the question, right? So that's a little bit. Those take more time, a little bit. This is just for brevity, just to get the feel for it.
係啊，佢用呢個做例子嘅啫，因為呢一個咧就係佢提出嚟嘅問題，咁所以佢就去即係你問咗嘢之後，就令到佢去澄清翻究竟佢自己諗緊啲乜嘢，或者係佢收到你啲問題之後咧，又去澄清更加多佢嘅諗法係啲乜咯。咁有可能嗰條題目係另外啲人提出嚟傾嘅，咁可能咧就會由嗰啲人去答嗰條問題咯。咁但係因為嗰啲會好複雜啊，即係我哋做唔到嘅今日，咁所以我用呢個模式先咯。 得唔得？你大家即係好快咁已經 challenge 咗呢啲挑戰一啲好根本嘅問題，我哋唔明嘅。
So I'm also going to take this opportunity to close Stack. So if you want to get on Stack really quickly. And closing Stack means I'm going to end the list, right? This window for asking questions is going to end. Usually it would go on for much longer, but since we're very short on time. Yeah, so if you want to get on Stack right now. And then after this is the last chance where you can register.
邊個仲有問題嘅，快啲舉埋手啦！剔咗呢個 Stack 嗰個人之後，你要自己 make sure 佢睇到你 ，Bonnie 係做緊嘅。仲有冇？寫晒名之後咧就開始㗎咯，又再嚟。
Kevin, you're up. Kelvin.
最重要嘅問題啦，AA 制定係大會俾錢？
Oh yeah, this is all on me. I got this. Wait, clarifying. This is a drill. This is not actually just in case anybody had any questions. But yes, in this scenario, I'm paying for everything. Okay, sure.
My question is, what are we trying to achieve through this dinner? And what are the criteria in evaluating whether that has been achieved? For example, is it going to be inclusive of all the members of the group here? Or are you going just to have a meal? So what is it that we're going to achieve here through this dinner?
That is a deep question. I think what we're trying to achieve is just feeding everyone tonight.
希望大家食飽啦，其實係。
So, right. So that is verging into the concern territory, right? So that's why after everybody understands what the proposal is, right? I'm suggesting an only meat dim sum dinner on me at 8 p.m. So maybe people will have issues with that, right? So we're going to move from clarifying questions into concerns, right? And if that happens, we would say, that sounds like a concern. We're about to get to concerns, so hold that concern for when we get there. Since we're at the end of the list for clarifying questions, though, we're going to move into it.
即係話咧，其實頭先嗰個第一個階段嚟嘅咧，就係話提咗一個提問出嚟，我哋要處理嗰個即係提議啦嘅時候咧，先俾啲人咧係問咗問題先嘅。咁好啦，問咗咧就係澄清咗其實嗰個 propose 係諗啲乜嘢嘢啦嚇，即係嗰個 propose 出嚟嘅方案係啲咩先嘅。咁然後跟住咧就出現 concern 嘅問題，即係話你有即係你點樣譯啊？中文 concern 就關注係啦，我有猶豫啊，或者覺得有少問題嘅地方啊咁就跟住落去處理咯。咁頭先阿 Shelly 嗰個就已經係 concern 嚟㗎啦，似乎係嘛？嗰個俾錢都係 concern。但係佢答咗嘛，佢 clarify 咗嘛，即刻咁咪冇問題咯，因為佢話係我俾㗎嘛，唔係佢俾佢話。
So right now we would be moving from clarifying questions and we would open Stack for concerns. So if you have a concern, yeah, then you could. You have to wait for your turn on Claire's first. So she'll get you.
晒名先，係啦。仲有邊個？仲有 concern 嚟㗎嚇，即係啲關注。
So go ahead, Clara.
嗰啲有問題㗎，有少少。寫咗個名先。係寫咗名先，再繼續講落去嘅。仲有邊個？即係話下一個，再下一個。
Okay, so I don't know if you heard Clara's concern. Do you want to repeat it, just in case I
said as a meat eater, I love meat. I think I have my right to a full meat meal, and we should not offer any vegetarian option.
Okay, so actually though, with this proposal, you would be fine because there's no vegetarian options currently.
I'm worried the minority voices
I know.
will say they're marginalized
I know.
minority and take over my right to eat.
Well, maybe we'll revisit that once that happens. So, okay.
佢咧就覺得冇理由喎，喂我哋咧不如排擠走啲veggie 嘅，即係食素嗰啲人咧，唔好俾佢參加先，費事嗰啲食素嘅人咧走嚟話咧，我哋而家唔俾佢參加啲嘢，又 rule out 佢啊，又話佢咩 silence majority 啊嗰扎嘢啦，大多數話好鬼煩。
So, okay, so we're gonna get you guys on staff, but really quickly before we go, Clara just brought up that she does not want to be inclusive to other people who are here, and she is anticipating that people will want to add vegetarian options to this meal. So, this is an instance when if we had our community agreements and inclusive spaces was on that agreement, we can say, I'm sorry, Clara, but right now you're not being a member of this community, forcing your beliefs on others. Oh, we're just talking about how, yeah.
Well, 佢 concern 嗰樣你問多次啊。
Well, I think yes, in a longer series we would. And we would also have a process by which to reconcile her, right? If she saw the error in her ways. But because, yeah, we planted her as a disruptor. We planted her as a disruptor. Okay, so just to prove a point as to why community agreements are important. And they are important because if you don't have that shared territory, that shared understanding, you can't do anything about someone like Clara, right? You can't get rid of her. Yeah, we're going to go to the next person on staff. Oh, 1 second.
Because I raised it in the previous section, and do I have to repeat myself again in this section? So this is a process.
Yeah,
okay.
This is, you probably would, especially just to get the feel of it, but any good facilitator would see that's a concern, but we would address it in this section, right? And so in the concern section, we take concerns like yours, and we suggest friendly amendments, right? Like, I love the idea, I'm for it, but can we also get vegetarian options, right? So you would then raise your concern, which you already said, which I can remind everyone is you're concerned about people who have religious beliefs that they can't eat pork, right? So then you would also suggest a friendly amendment that would resolve that concern, right? So do you have a friendly amendment that could help resolve your concern?
I think there are two options. One is providing vegetarian options. The other one is choose halal restaurants, which are certified restaurants for people who believe. So that's why I wanted to raise why we have this things tonight proposal in the first place in the previous section, because it seems that we have the second option rule out this proposal completely. Yeah.
Right. So a friendly amendment is one that doesn't completely transform the proposal. And so that one would completely transform the proposal. So so a friendly addition to this would be vegetarian options as well, right? So we can write that into the proposal as a friendly amendment, right? How do people, and usually you'll do a temperature check after friendly amendments, and I'll explain what temperature checks are. So temperature checks are a quick poll of the people who are here to see how they feel about taking that amendment. So how do people feel using hand signs about taking that suggestion to add vegetarian options?
嗱呢度簡單總結，即係話嗰個促進員咧，其實係有需要咧，係會記得嗰個即係頭先提咗出嚟嗰個 concern 係咩嚟嘅，咁佢就會再重複一次咧。而嗰個方式咧就係要去 address 佢啊，即係要將佢嘅 concern 帶翻出嚟喺呢一度咧，然後大家去討論嘅。咁如果你將啲 concern register 咗之後，其實個促進員其實就可以咧喺度問翻，即係我其實唔係好了解到頭先嗰個問題係咩問題啦。 咁但係咧就會將個問題提出嚟，然後跟住問大家嘅意見啦。咁到時咧你又可以用呢個 hand sign 去 show， 譬如話咁我哋會唔會少咗照顧veggie 嘅人啊咁樣樣，咁大家點睇啊？或者用一個咩方法去處理嘅時候，大家同意同定係唔同意啊？得唔得？即係嗰個 facilitator 其實就需要去做呢個角色咯。So OK 啊，唔得嗰啲記得講嘢啊嚇。Yes。重新係啦，再將個 proposal 咧係會再修訂嘅。
Right. So right now we're going to do a temperature check, which is just letting me know how you feel about altering slightly the proposal to include vegetarian options. How do people feel about that? Great. People feel really good about it. So we're going to add that. You can't block. So you can't block this because this is not the formal consensus process, right? We haven't moved this into the consensus process. I'm just getting a quick read as a facilitator about how people feel about adding that friendly amendment.
係啦，即係一樣嘅，佢會問翻，同埋咧就係即係大家一齊去討論下，究竟大家對於加 veggie 嘅選擇落去有冇問題咧咁樣？咁如果觀察到其實都好多人會同意嘅話，咁就會去修訂翻提出嚟嗰個建議咯，得唔得？即係我哋咁樣去想像嗰個處理。
So let's go back to our stack list. What other concerns are there? Two more.
What will we do after the dim sum dinner? The first question is what will we do after the dim sum dinner? And the second question is what if CY Leung want to join us?
So those don't sound like concerns really. They're kind of more questions about what's going to happen. Very good questions. We didn't answer them in the clarifying questions. I don't know if they really have to do with this proposal. Is another thing. So we're just gonna let that go since they aren't actually concerns, right? Okay. Yeah, those are just questions. They're not actually concerns. So.
I just want to ask first, are the concerns going to be about specific situations rather than the general picture? Let's say something happened, raising the concern, something happened in the event.
Yeah. That's actually a really good question because I've definitely facilitated general assemblies where other things were happening and we kept going with the assembly and people had concerns about other things. And at those moments you kind of have to just stop what's going on and address the moment and talk about what's happening if something else becomes suddenly more important. So that kind of gets to the flexibility of this process because you're going to have to make those calls as a facilitator eventually if life just happens. So that's a really good question.
And I'm asking Chinese then. Sorry. 即係咁樣，如果嗰個人話應承咗嗰個人俾錢嗰個人咧，佢突然間走數喎、走佬喎，即係尿道走咗去喎，咁我哋可唔可以係一齊讓愛與和平佔領容記㗎？
即係咁咪唔俾錢喎？
係啊，我哋佔領容記亦即係直接我嗰個人係。
So usually for proposals, we try to keep the concerns exactly to the proposal. If that happens, you could then have another consensus process to figure out if you want to then occupy, but we usually try to stay out of theoreticals when we're making concerns and
situational questions will be important.
Yeah, because what ifs and who knows, if it's not directly related in an obvious way, you try to stay away from it. Also, questions kind of come earlier, right? And this is really the space for concerns, right? So concerns with the proposal as stated.
即係嗰個假設性嗰個問題咧就唔會處理嘅。 係啦，就係再即係重新再傾究竟我哋安唔安橋牌，就係另一個 issue 嚟嘅，係另一個 proposal 嚟。
So actually, no, I want to talk about that because you had a point of process in the back, right? Because that wasn't actually a concern, maybe, right? So she caught that that wasn't actually a concern and then did the point of process. So that's just kind of seeing how things work together.
即係提醒大家咧，就係話嗱，而家我哋一路咁樣傾落去咧，就係想大家明白成個過程係點嘅，大概會出現啲咩問題，然後個處理，即係阿 Nicole 嗰個處理方法，大概係會點樣 run 嘅。嗱，呢個就係佢一路做緊個模式嚟嘅。咁其實之後大家會點樣做？話你可以作為一個參考去再 develop 一啲我哋自己嘅處理嘅方法都 OK 嘅，得唔得？如果係嘅話，我哋就繼續 move on 咯喎。
So last person on staff, Abby.
Well, some people may have infectious disease, and if we let them eat separately, and it will not help build our solidarity. And if we all eat separately, it will be worse. So how could we solve this problem?
That is a concern. So you're concerned that, let me repeat, you're concerned that if we eat together and someone has an infectious disease, that we would all get sick, or that if they were excised, that would not be good for our solidarity. So, and usually, let me just say, you want to root the concerns in kind of what is happening with the proposal. But this is a good question, right? So maybe, can we think of a solution, maybe collectively, about something we can do that won't excise people who are sick if we all eat together?
即係頭先提出咗啦，如果有人有病嘅，即係會傳染到嘅，咁點算咧？咁通常個 facilitator 就會問翻群眾究竟，咦係喎，如果有呢個咁嘅情況，大家認為會點樣處理會好啲咧？請大家提出 proposal 咯，得唔得？即係你建議可以點樣做咯
？These are friendly amendments to appeal to that concern. Any ideas? We'll start a small stack for friendly amendments to appeal to that concern. Let's just go with this one first.
I think we can use public chopsticks to one hand to improve all people, and then we could just help prevent the infectious disease.
用公筷啦，佢提議，即係開始有提議出嚟啦。
Do we generally feel good about that?
大家覺得用公筷好唔好啊？咁樣。
Okay, great. Okay, mostly good though. So great. We will add that friendly amendment to our proposal, and so now we will see. Okay, so I will reread the proposal. Will we have dim sum tonight that can be vegetarian or meat, depending on what people want, at 8 p.m. and then also use proper chopsticks so we don't pass contagious diseases. How do we feel about that in general?
即係話傾到咁上下咧，佢就會總結翻頭先 agree 到嗰堆嘢㗎，然後咧就等你表態，又睇下咧究竟有幾有同意唔同意啊咁嗰啲，即係8點鐘話佢請我哋食點心啊，有 meat 有 veggie 㗎，再會用公筷啊。
And then I was paying. Okay. So yeah, so that's a temperature check. So it looks good. So I'm going to move this into consensus process. So this is when it begins. So when you are moving something in the consensus process, you restate the proposal. Well, we just did that. So I'm just going to ask, are there any stand-asides and are there any blocks? A stand-aside is if you just don't like the proposal, you don't feel good about it, but stand aside.
係啦，當咧有一個 proposal 已經去到即係好似頭先咁比較清晰嘅時候咧，就都仍然要問一問嘅，有冇人係會即係唔做呢一樣嘢啊？即係離開係啦，即係我唔會參與呢一樣嘢嘅，定係話仲有一個係咩話 block 係啦，即係好 deviate， 即係好脫離佢嘅道德價值、信念啊、各樣相信啊嗰啲嘢啦嚇。即係仍然會問呢兩個問題咯。咁即係話，如果有啲人覺得係啊，你今晚8點食點心，諸如此類嗰扎嘢，佢唔會參與嘅，咁佢可以喺而家有一個表態機會話俾人聽咧，我係唔會參與呢樣嘢嘅咁樣。咁係用 what signs they need to show
So you just, it's just an ask, right? So does anybody stand aside? You can just raise your hand.
哦，OK，即係舉手啦。如果大家會你會 stand aside 嘅，睇會舉手。
So does anybody stand aside from this proposal? Two. All right. Okay. Which that just means you don't feel good about the proposal. You're not super into it, but you know you're not gonna you're just not gonna work to make it happen, which is fine. Usually you would go into why everyone's having a stand aside, but for the purposes of this, you don't really need to. So that just basically means I'm not going to make it happen. What's more important is if there are any blocks. So are there any blocks to this proposal? Okay. Let's not ask for it. With every block, you really want to figure out why there are blocks, right? So what is your moral and ethical imperative against this proposal?
It's moral, but firstly, I am vegetarian, and secondly, I don't want to eat after 8. It will make me fat, so I don't want to do it. But I want some amendment.
So this, well, okay. So let's also be clear. We already closed stack on concerns and amendments. We're already moved into this final stage. This will happen, right? And you can remind people because there was an opportunity where you could have said something earlier, but you didn't. And if it's super important, then you could always have flexibility. But usually, and especially with this case, we're going to say, you know what, you could have raised that earlier. And also, that's not a block, right? That's not actually a block. At best, it's a mild concern. Because it's not against our principles to eat after 8. You know, we didn't talk about that. We aren't, you know, we're including vegetarian options so everybody can have some food. So there really isn't a grounding for that as a block. If there's a block, if something, you'll know if it's a block. You'll know if it's a block.
講翻少少，鄭話少少先。正話 stand aside 其實係投棄權投票嗰個人，其實就係話啊，我又唔係好中意一樣嘢，但係咦我又唔死得嘅，我哋覺得佢啊做乜都好啦，咁就棄權投票嗰個 stand aside，你企埋一邊，我哋唔數你啲票。咁就話嗰位先生就提出咗個問題，就係話我8點鐘之後食嘢對身體唔好，然後又乜。咁Nicole 咧就話對唔住啦，先生，你過咗秒啦。我哋因為呢一個 concern 咧，呢個關注應該之前提出嘅。Nicole 話好多時呢啲嘢係比較彈性嘅，但係由於今次呢個咁簡單嘅題目咧，佢過咗秒就過咗秒啦。咁就係佢會繼續去做呢一個嘅正式個共識嘅議程咁樣。
Okay. Do we have one more block? Was it really a block? Okay.
How about say if I oppose it? I'm totally against it. That's no way.
Okay, so usually these are it's a block for the group, right? If the group taking this action is against our group principles, it's not so much an individual principle, unless you feel excluded as a Buddhist and it's not inclusive to you, right?
首先一次個 block 其實佢之前都講咗，個 block 用咧就唔係個人嗰個嘅道德觀念，因為我哋個人道德同個組嘅全組嘅道德咧要相符嘅，如果唔係就去唔到噶啦。咁變咗如果你用個人道德嘅話咧，就唔可以trump over， 即係唔可以係霸權咗其他嗰個道德觀念。所以個 block 就唔成立嘅。
Our group is against monopoly, right? And I just happen to know that all dim sum now in Hong Kong is monopolized by one company. So if we are going to have dim sum tonight, we will be really working against what we have agreed or come forward for. So I want to block this.
So this would be a block, right? If this was true, which it's not true, right? This would be a block.
There are a few monopolies.
Right, so this would be an actual block, right? Because it's against what we're all here for. Great, thank you for that. So, because there were not any real blocks, and because there were only a few stand-asides, we now have consensus, right? Because we're all for it, we all feel good about it generally, and we've manipulated it to the point where we're happy with it. So celebrate because we have consensus, right? We just did this together.
佢話由於我哋得幾個 standard 幾個棄權同幾個 block， 咁其實得一個 block 其實係 valid 嘅啫。咁我哋大致上都同意，所以我哋就達到咗共識啦。咁樣樣，咁我哋大家開心一下啦。
Okay, great. So do you feel like you kind of have a sense for this a little bit? I know it's a really cursory introduction because we have to move on and do a few other things. But like, let's use this. Do we generally feel like we understand consensus? Generally?
其實大家係咪好清有少少概念？究竟呢一個共識決定係點樣做嘅咧？係嘅，我哋又舉下手咁樣樣下。
Goes with like some kind of ignoring the block.
Yeah. Well, because we didn't just ignore the block. Okay. Yeah. So it wasn't.
I think the question was if the block has a valid basis.
Right.
So do we still go around it, or it's just a block?
If the block has a valid basis, so okay, this is important. If a block has a valid basis, you'll probably see in the crowd more people picking up the block, right? That's not true, so it wasn't actually something we were tapping into, but if that was true, people would join you with that. And there's actually an explanation about things to do when you haven't reached consensus, right? Which happens a lot. So if we could pull the thing back up, I could talk about some of that.
佢即係有人話係咪處理個 block 就係唔理佢哋就處理咗個 block 咧？咁亦都話唔係嘅。如果係一個真正嘅 block 咧，其實係會翻轉頭處理翻嗰個 proposal 嘅。不過而家同埋咧，如果係真正嘅 block 咧，其他啲人會 pick up 嘅，會支持佢嘅。咁佢發現即係兩樣嘢都冇發生，咁所以咧就會當過咗啦。咁亦都呢一個只係一個模擬嚟嘅。如果我哋繼續即係翻轉頭，咁我哋8點鐘我哋去唔到食點心已經。
So if